Well, it is Friday, so let's try to wind this down a little bit. For those of you who are in the creative industries, movie artists, actors and actresses, video editing, all of you who are in the creative, entertainment, whatever industry. Sometimes when we talk about the central bank and the interventions by the Bankers Committee, it seems we talk a lot more about the agri, the MSMEs. Now the Bankers Committee says they're coming with a specific credit program that will help those of you in the creative industries. And that's part of the decisions reached at yesterday's Bankers Committee meeting. So as you go for the weekend, you need to take this in your stride. But the big boys where the government is also looking to create jobs in the agri sector. So if you're doing business, not just in creative industry, but you're within the value chain of agriculture in cocoa, sesame seed, the palm oil and what have you, there's a 200 billion naira coming through to you there. So let's take a listen to some of the officials of the central bank and the banks themselves yesterday who spoke to the media in, of course, the usual after closed-door media briefing, and then what they say about the way forward for agriculture and our creative industry. So take a listen for a few minutes.
It's on a positive note that the committee noted the positive outlook of the economy, the positive sentiments, and the confidence that the economy has garnered despite the global headwinds in the global economy. For instance, the Bankers Committee happily noted that lending to the private sector, even to the economy generally, has increased, and that's a very positive news. That confidence by foreign investors has also increased. That, for instance, between January and March, despite the issue of the election, up to $6 billion came in, and that's positive news. So the committee decided to consolidate on these gains and come up with, or continue with those initiatives that the committee talked about earlier. And the gentlemen on the table here are going to talk about those initiatives. So we're going to continue with the import substitution program, the Anchor Borrows program, and some other new initiatives that the Bankers Committee had talked about earlier.
As you all know, this is something that we've always talked about, even in schools. We talk about Nigeria being a mono economy, oil only, and so many seminars have happened, a lot of resolutions, but the committee believes that we really haven't made much progress in this direction. Hence, that was the theme of the retreat. And subsequent to that, the committee set up a subcommittee of the members of the broader committee. And the subcommittee members are those who have operated in geographies in our continent where export have done very well. We've seen some geographies that don't have a mono product. And indeed, they had similar products that we used to be number 1, number 2 in the past, that today we've dropped out of the top 10. So the question is, what are these countries doing that we're not doing? What are those things that are challenging us as a nation to diversify our economy from the standpoint of export? So we interrogated this, worked with the different government agencies across the continent, and also we came back home to check what we have. And we found out that indeed, we had a lot of policies, but the challenge has been execution. And we narrowed this down to 7 broad areas. And typically, people will say they don't have money, which is true. Finance is one of the major challenges. But again, logistics. We saw logistics as a challenge, policies as a challenge, because the world has moved on. We understand that even though we're talking about export, that it should be round the clock, our ports do not open over the weekend. So it means we can't even export. And in terms of the policies that drive export, we believe that a lot of them need to be changed. And we know about the congestion at the ports. So we looked at all these things and broke them into immediate, mid-term, and long-term, because some we cannot address within a very short period. Fortunately, central bank has different types of funds. So we look at the existing funding structure so that we don't reinvent the wheel and see which of these funding can address the current challenges. And we did find a lot. And also we look at the viability of these products in terms of, if we do this, how will it help in export, address employment issues, create the necessary economic activities, and also create relief in terms of effects. Because if a commodity, we add value to it, we'll create employment here, and that will save us effects. As against what we do today, that most of our products are exported in raw form. And indeed, there are some of these things that we believe that with just a little push, we can get to, if we don't get to the final stage of refining, we can get to just close to that and add a lot more value. So we have gone further to break this down. Which of these commodity areas should we focus on? Oil, palm, as you all know, we used to be number one. We decided to focus on that. Cocoa is another area. Sesame seed is another area. And of course, shea and cashew. So we are going ahead with this, applying the existing fund that we have identified in Central Bank. And based on the meeting we have today, we are going to be lending at a single digit up to a maximum of 10 years for each of these, depending on the particular product and the stage of the company. And we're going to devote almost 200 billion naira to support this. That will change the narrative for export in Nigeria.
And there are 4 verticals. One has to do with movies, the other has to do with music, the third has to do with IT, and of course, the fourth has to do with fashion. And what we've decided to do is to take it to the next level, which is basically to revisit the entire value chain of each of these verticals. So right from the production facilities all the way to the last mile in terms of capacity building and making sure that whatever is produced along each of the verticals is such that it is of world-class standard. So today at the Bankers Committee, we got the final nod to take it to the next level, which is simply to do a final presentation and share with the markets how it's going to happen. So I would imagine that sometime next week, there will be some advertorials out in the market for people or eligible people who want to participate in each of the verticals. I'm talking of people who want to be beneficiaries of the facilities which will be given. Now, the specific amounts will depend on which of the strata you basically fall into and basically what you're doing. But the loans are for a maximum of 10 years. They are single-digit interest rate loans. And of course, they are reflective of the fact that in this specific industry, what you require is long-term financing, single-digit funding, and of course, while we may ask for collateral, but it will be very, very flexible. I think it's a big initiative because it will do a couple of things to our country. As a starting point, it will lead to about 300,000 employment in terms of number of people who are employed over a 5-year time span. It will lead to significant accretion as far as foreign exchange is concerned, coming from each of the verticals. And of course, also lead to significant savings that we see today in the textile industry, where most of the things that are produced or are done overseas with textiles and the entire production facilities. So that is the thrust. And so we expect, now it is imminent, by next week or the week after, hopefully we should start seeing advertorials for beneficiaries who will be properly screened to make sure that they meet the eligibility criteria.
I believe the money is coming out of AgSmith, which means that the banks are giving back to create an industry. Everybody likes music, movies, fashion. And then we have a chance, when you look at the very young, talented people that we have in this country, that we have a chance to help create it and help grow their dreams and help them achieve their vision. So as an industry, I think we owe the country to develop employment and to create entrepreneurs. So it's a very, very exciting time. We thank the central bank greatly for also embracing this, and it's open to all Nigerians, and I'm hoping that in 3 to 5 years, the benefits of what has been done today will become very apparent and evident to the country.
There is something I will need to respond to, and that's the news that some of you have carried today, especially the online ones, about a certain study by a certain publication saying that 70% of rice in the Nigerian markets are imported rice. I think I have serious doubts. We should express serious doubts over that study. I'm sure they must have put their parameters upside down. And I want to urge you to go into the markets to find out for yourselves. And even within this room, if you take if you take a sample of people, you will know that most families now eat Nigerian rice. What may be confusing to people is the level of packaging, the quality of packaging that you see. And when you see it, some of them are actually better than some of the smuggled rice. And so you need to read on the bags to be able to know that this is made in Nigeria rice. I know that a couple of people are also making that, having a national study of that very phenomenon, whether the imported rice is still as much as was written in that report. So I will urge you to also engage in such a report. You will be pleasantly surprised that that report is not true. I also want to make it clear to all of us that the CBN has decided to work with relevant agencies to deal with smugglers. The Bankers Committee also took that decision today to work with relevant agencies to deal with all those people who are sabotaging our economy through funding or giving access to smugglers. And we are already working with the EFCC on that.
Okay, some of the highlights of Thursday's Bankers Committee meeting here in Lagos, those interventions and what the central bank and the banks are doing. Let's take this to a bit of this to the marketplace. But again, just look opposite across the street, you find the stock market losing close to 600 billion naira since we started the week, effectively since we started April the 1st.